Thanks for joining us. I'm Kelda Yoon. Dwight is on assignment. Toronto police are investigating a shooting that happened outside of rapper Drake's house. Our Dale Manukduk joins us now outside the mansion on the bridle path. And Dale, we know it wasn't Drake who was shot. What do we know about the victim's connection to the rapper?
Yeah, Kelda, police say that the victim is a security guard who works at Drake's house. Whatever happened overnight early this morning seemed to have really heightened tensions here at the home. I can tell you that ever since police cleared this scene, which was just after the lunch hour, there's been a heightened private security presence building. You can see that there are several large all-black SUVs parked behind me, 2 on the driveway, 3 more on the street. I saw some men get out of them earlier, huddle up and pass around some walkie-talkies. And one neighbor says that's not normal. He says there's usually just one small white security vehicle parked on the street, staffed 24/7. Now, it is early in this investigation. Police can't say much, but have a listen to what they were able to share. Police say they were called to a shooting at Drake's Bridle Path home around 2 a.m. One neighbor says he heard 3 to 4 shots ring out.
I thought I was dreaming, and I didn't know if it was if I heard what I heard. And then maybe 5-10 minutes later, I heard the sirens. Yeah, so then that kind of made me think, okay, that was what I think it was.
Toronto police say the suspects fired from inside a vehicle and fled. One man was rushed to hospital with life-threatening injuries.
That person was working, apparently, as a security guard at the residence. He was standing outside of the gates in front of the residence when the shooting occurred. We have individuals who obviously performed the shooting who were seen in a vehicle. I do not have a description of the vehicle or the suspects at this time.
Toronto police do have video of the shooting happening. There are several security cameras outside of Drake's home. However,
we're dealing with video quality issues, correct? So we, as we have information and we're able to analyze video better, then we'll be able to provide more information.
Investigators say it's too early to speculate on the motive of the shooting. They would not confirm if Drake was in the house at the time, but say they are connected with his people. Drake has not made any public statements about the incident. Several private security guards were present throughout the day, keeping watch of the home.
People that are in the rapper world, they are the most highest threat level of any people in the entertainment industry.
Kent Moyer specializes in close protection of celebrities and was an expert witness for Suge Knight in relation to the murder of Tupac Shakur.
It's very loud and clear that he has lived at that property, and that's another concern that whenever a celebrity has a property, you want to discreetly remove all their private information and locations where they live from databases so that nobody would know that this is his property.
Hey, Kendrick just opened his mouth. Someone go hand him a Grammy right now.
Meanwhile, the shooting comes on the heels of a weeks-long feud between Drake and Compton, California-based rapper Kendrick Lamar.
Drop a 50 bag for the mob in a spot.
The two have been releasing songs aimed at each other in which they make very serious allegations, including domestic abuse, pedophilia, and dragging each other's families into the lyrics of their songs.
We could have left the kids out of this, don't blame me.
There's zero evidence to suggest the two situations are linked.
Trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor.
Kendrick Lamar's most recent song, referred to as a diss track, was released on Saturday, and the cover art for the single was a Google Earth aerial view of Drake's house.
They not like us. They not like us.
Police were asked if it had anything to do with the shooting.
I am aware of what you're talking about, but it is so early in the investigation that we don't have a motive at this time, and so I cannot comment further on that.
So, Kelda, we have one man who was shot outside of Drake's home. He suffered life-threatening injuries and remains in hospital. Police are asking that anyone with information or video contact them or Crime Stoppers. We'll send it back to you.
Thanks for all your work today, Dale. That's our Dale Manukduk reporting. So when and how did all this rap beef start between Drake and Kendrick? Paul Parhar, also known as Mastermind, is a longtime broadcaster. He joins us now to help break it down for us. And Paul, this has really escalated over the past few weeks. Give us kind of the Cliff Notes version. How did this rap battle all start?
You know, hip hop has always been a braggadocious. I'm the number one. Very, very much a braggadocious style of music, and it's from the very beginning. That's how it started. And Drake and Kendrick have worked together. Drake took Kendrick on tour with him in the early days, and other than the braggadocious, like who's the best rapper, I'm the best rapper kind of thing, I don't know where the personal side of this comes in. You'd have to be a little more associated on either side or far more in touch. But it definitely elevated. There's been a couple of times where Kendrick has already kind of baited Drake, if you will, and a bunch of other MCs and rappers to kind of battle him. There was a song a number of years ago off of a Big Sean record called Control, and Kendrick it was a long verse on it. He was taking, all these other rappers and talking about him. And Drake has never really engaged. A lot of it has been subliminals here and there. And the last record that he did was called Like That, where he joined Metro Boomin and Future on a song. And this is where it actually finally started calling out names. And Drake finally responded. And from there, it just back and forth. And here we are, 11 songs later.
Yeah, and some pretty nasty allegations being hurled at one another. We know rappers have long been targeting each other in their songs, but do you think this rap battle went too far?
It's funny when you think about what's fair in love and war, so to speak. Like, Jay-Z and Nas went through this same thing, and when their battle escalated, Jay-Z put out a song called Super Ugly, and he had some pretty, not that they were not real, but he said some pretty, aggressive things in his song. And ironically, or the funny part about it is Jay-Z's mother apparently hit him up and was like, hey, you may have stepped over the line on this one. And they kind of deaded it after that. It didn't go anywhere. Now, again, why it's gotten so personal, you have to be either part of the, Top Dog camp or part of the OVO camp to really know all the details. I obviously don't know any of that. But it's a battle. And in a battle, even like, just the other day, Tom Brady got roasted by a bunch of comedians, and there was a lot of personal stuff that was said, and some of it is ugly. Those roasts are supposed to be funny and ugly. And this is kind of the same way. You try to roast somebody. What is too far? As long as it doesn't escalate beyond music, then, I think everything is fair game. That's for the audience to decide. I mean, fans are fans, and times are different these days, but you're always trying to do that one-upmanship, if you will, and out-roast your opponent.
Police haven't made any connection between the shooting at Drake's house and this feud with Kendrick, but we've seen similar feuds like this escalate violently in the past, and we've seen lots of feuds between rappers. You mentioned Nas and Jay-Z. Why do you think some feuds can lead to violence?
Yeah, this is the part of the genre that is, for a lot of people is the ugly part of it. It's because, when it goes from quote unquote sportsmanship to, something bigger and far more escalated, it puts a black eye on the entire culture. Now, the why, I think, is because it gets really personal, and some people can't, either take the heat in terms of the disses and the insults, and other people may think it's way too personal. So it's hard to say. The timing of what happened last night with Drake and the shooting at his place obviously is a little suspicious and coincidental. But again, we can't speculate on what is behind it until they figure it all out.
So what do you think happens now? Do you expect this feud between Drake and Kendrick to maybe calm down, perhaps come to an end?
I mean, if you listen to Drake's last record, which was Heartbeat Part 5, I think it was called, he addressed everything that I guess Drake felt needed to be addressed, that he was, being, accused of and whatnot. And he had some lines in there. He was like, yo, I said what I need to say. You got 10 more songs. Go ahead, drop them. I'll see you when I see you. It's almost like he's saying, I'm good on my side. If you want to keep going, feel free. But, just, again, based off of how things have escalated to where they are, I'm hoping it's over. I mean, it was great. Like, if you're a fan of hip-hop, if you're a fan of rapping, if you're a fan of lyrics and great production, because everybody stepped up their game and elevated it. And the creativity and just artistry on both sides of this, like, eliminate the personal shots and all of that stuff, but just two artists at the top of their game, putting out the caliber of music they did as quick as they did in a span of a week or so. is like something we may not ever see again in hip hop anyway. It was really incredible, and it put a real new energy back into the music because it's kind of been lagging and stagnant a little bit, and now it's really kind of put a battery in it, which is great. Again, if you're fans of the music.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today to talk to us about this. Paul Parhar, also known as Mastermind, is a longtime broadcaster. Thanks again.
Thank you.
To another early morning shooting in our city. One person is dead and another is wounded following a shooting in Oakwood Village. Ali Chiasson was at the scene and has the latest.
The shooting happened right out front of the victim's apartment building here while he and his girlfriend were outside having a talk. It happened just after 1 a.m. While they were talking, a vehicle pulled up and a suspect started firing shortly after. The victim, a 34-year-old man, died. We're not identifying him until we know for sure that next of kin has been notified. His girlfriend was also injured. Still a lot unknown, including who did this. Police are still looking for the suspect.
The information that we have at the moment is that the suspect or suspects, it's unknown the amount of occupants inside the vehicle, approached in a vehicle. We are canvassing for video to get a better description. When we have that description, we will let you know immediately.
I spoke to the building superintendent who was startled awake by the victim's girlfriend banging on his door to call 911, which of course he did. She told him what she saw. She says the vehicle pulled up to them, her boyfriend walked up to the vehicle and started talking to the occupants, and all of a sudden, she says, bullets flew. Residents tell me they are as shocked as they are saddened by this.
Well, I heard a couple shots well. A lot. So I hear blam, 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 blam about 7. Then I hear burp after.
It's sad. It's sad. It's a very, everybody's close together here. Close, knit together. And I know him personally. I know him because I speak to him on a regular basis, but I haven't seen him for a while. But now I heard that he got shots.
We normally hang out at the back of the building. And then we barbecue, we have fun, we all there together and stuff like that. And then this is what really happens. And then you just wake up and then all of a sudden that he's dead. Just like that. Come on, these things have to stop, man. We calling for peace, man. Peace. What would drive somebody to take somebody's life just like that? It's heartbroken.
Some of his neighbors have just come by to lay some flowers here as a little memorial in his name. Meanwhile, investigators are still going door to door, appealing for witnesses and looking for surveillance footage that might have caught that suspect vehicle driving away. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
A man is dead after being crushed by a steamroller in Whitby in what appears to be a workplace accident. Durham police say they responded to an ambulance call just before noon near Hopkins Street and Consumers Drive. When they arrived, they say they discovered an unconscious man trapped under the machine. The incident happened on a work site, and the Ministry of Labour has taken over the investigation. Bus service across the city's suburbs is getting a boost. The TTC announced today that it's increasing reliability on 24 routes starting next week. Municipal Affairs reporter Sean Jeffords has those details.
The 95A traveling east on Ellesmere Avenue. The busy route runs 18 kilometers across much of the East End through Scarborough. It's one of the 24 bus routes where service will be enhanced in the coming days. It's all part of a budget hike to the TTC approved in February by City Council.
We're actually adding thousands of hours across the city at all times of day, bringing service to 96% of pre-pandemic levels.
Those changes are now being implemented, says the TTC's CEO. Bus routes in Etobicoke, North York, and Scarborough will be part of the shift, adding more service in off-peak hours. The mayor says people in many parts of the city are used to waiting for transit, and that needs to change.
So I hear from people that they want more buses. That's what they want. They want more buses, more frequently, shorter wait times, a comfortable ride, not jammed like sardines.
These social workers from a nearby clinic say the increase is welcome. They help youth get back on their feet after a mental health crisis.
TTC is integral to helping my clients get to their appointments, see their doctors, get groceries and overall function. We know we're in a cost of living crisis, so people need reliable, accessible, and affordable transportation.
The TTC is once again like imperative to that, especially in this community, because like the TTC is usually the main form of transportation for a lot of the people that I work with.
The change comes at a time when the TTC is still struggling to bring riders back after the pandemic. While service levels are climbing, ridership across the system remains at 82% of pre-pandemic levels. The chair of the TTC board says part of that comes down to improving dependability.
It's 100% restoring confidence in the system, restoring faith, restoring reliability, and also attracting new customers. So people who drive, maybe if we can get them, using the system 1 or 2 times a week, that's a win.
Transit advocate Steve Monroe is skeptical of the promises made today. The TTC hasn't yet released the schedules for the route enhancements, so riders can compare them to the previous versions, he says.
From past experience, I know that they will tend to make these announcements, and when you finally get the details, there is far less there than it's made out to be.
The changes are set to go into effect on May 12th. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
Today marks day 6 of student protesters occupying a section of campus at the University of Toronto. The protest coincides with similar demonstrations taking place across North America, and it's just the latest in a long history of student action on university campuses. Tyler Cheese spoke with students about how past protests are informing the present.
Last year, we held an 18-day occupation of a building at Victoria College, which is part of the University of Toronto, demanding that they join the broader university and divest from fossil fuels.
The University of Toronto officially divested from its fossil fuel holdings in 2021, but last year students organized against 3 independent colleges that were still holding out.
We were ultimately successful, which was really exciting.
Erin Mackey is one of the organizers of the current student encampment to protest the university's ties to Israel. She says last year's win is giving her hope for another.
It is totally possible. They have an ethical investments policy, and really all we're asking is for them to adhere to it.
The students' current demands include divestment from any assets that contribute to the state of Israel.
Universities are notoriously secretive about what companies they're actually investing in.
Experts say most universities take a non-political stance on investments, but there is precedent for student activism to make a difference. Specifically, the student divestment campaigns against South African apartheid in the 1980s.
It is largely credited with being a major political factor in creating the political conditions for the Canadian government to impose real meaningful economic sanctions against South Africa.
He believes the current movement could have a similar effect in changing views on the conflict in the Middle East. But as the occupation continues, some on campus say they're feeling uneasy.
I would like to see all of the really hostile slogans on the posters being taken down.
Robert Schwartz is a Jewish professor who teaches at the university. He says he's spoken with other Jewish faculty members who say they also feel unsafe.
I feel somewhat threatened. I'm very concerned with some of the slogans that are on the signs and some of the chants that are being used, and it really feels quite threatening.
Still, he's hoping for a peaceful resolution between the administration and protesters. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. City staff are investigating reports of a high number of dead fish floating along the banks of the Grenadier Pond. The people who regularly fish in the area say the problem is getting worse.
A whole bunch of little fish along the shore, about 100 fish or more. It's very concerning. If you like to fish, you need to go somewhere where you can catch the fish and not see a whole bunch of dead fish.
The city says it is working with the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority and the Ministry of Environment to investigate the reason these fish are dying. The city has identified them as bluegill fish, and it appears they died at some point in mid-April. The TRCA says temperature fluctuations over the past few weeks, along with high rainfall, may be to blame. And Colette, we do have some rain on the way, but we woke up to a gorgeous day. Just couldn't ask for a nicer day.
Yeah, it has been a really, really nice Tuesday, and it continues into at least the early evening, and then things start to change up a little bit. Our current temperature is still holding at 20 degrees, just a little bit cooler with some high teens there in Hamilton and St. Catharines. But where the light shower activity is back into southwestern Ontario, but on the doorstep coming into southwestern Ontario shortly and eventually up towards Georgian Bay is some active weather. And this is associated with the same storm system that we can show you some images from what happened in Barnesdale, Oklahoma, just from the past 24 to 36 hours. So every day there's been a destructive outbreak of tornadoes, damaging winds. This one happened to be deadly. And these images, this is in the light of day. These storms went through, many cases they're going through when we're talking about the cover of darkness. So even more difficult to really be paying attention or take cover if folks didn't go to bed with their, severe weather radios on. And believe me, in these parts of Tornado Alley, folks do have ways to be prepared. So just absolute devastation there that we're seeing today coming out of Barnesdale. And now the strong storms today, well, those have moved a little bit further east. So let's get you over here to some of the storms moving into Michigan. This cluster here has some tornado warned storms with it. And then there's more. This is really tracking more towards the northeast. It will weaken over Lake Huron, and then still some storms will make their way, not nearly as severe, but towards Georgian Bay and the Bruce Peninsula. But also watching this cluster here in Indiana, because that too is tracking to the northeast and will be coming towards southwestern Ontario. So Environment Canada has now issued a severe thunderstorm watch for that region. And these areas all I have here outlined in red, tornado watches, a huge area, and where they're filled in tornado warnings, again, with that cluster of storms right there. So into southwestern Ontario over the next couple of hours, and the risks there of some large hail, a few tornadoes. The stronger stuff is here and won't be quite as potent later on this evening. And then the remnants of those reach us towards the GTA, getting more towards midnight. Again, they won't be as strong. I'm not as concerned. Could see some damaging winds through these at that time. It's more towards southwestern Ontario where we have the risk here if they hold their punch a little bit. So I'll be watching that area, and certainly you will have some storms coming there, like I said, into Cottage Country, a bit further north towards Collingwood and towards Parry Sound. Tomorrow, an interesting day. We get into the warm sector. We'll have some strong winds. We're going to have some warm temperatures, but we'll also have some rain coming through as we get into the latter part of the day. So what comes tonight dries out by tomorrow morning. We hit 22 degrees, but into the afternoon and evening, we will see a resurgence of that risk of some active weather.
And cooling down, it seems, on Thursday,
After
Friday.
that, yeah, I wasn't going to get to that yet. Yes.
We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
And we'll be right back after a short break. Stay with us. A new lawsuit alleges First Nations in the province are being denied equal access to justice. Indigenous chiefs are now suing the provincial and federal governments. Today, they took their fight to Queen's Park. Lorena Redekop has the story.
They wanted to make their presence known, heading from outside the Premier's office to the doors of the Legislative Chamber. Indigenous chiefs, on-reserve police chiefs, and the NDP's Saul Mamakwa.
When those people are coming here and they haven't committed a crime yet, but we know they're in our area and they're there for criminal activity. And I'm talking about drug trafficking, we have organized crime, human trafficking, and when you see the way human trafficking is tied into murder and missing Indigenous women and girls.
The Chiefs of Ontario has filed a lawsuit against the province and the federal government. They say that while First Nations can make their own laws, they're not being prosecuted. One police chief of 6 First Nations communities says trespassing is one example of something not being enforced. The Chiefs of Ontario have written to the Prime Minister and the Premier. In the letter to the Premier, they blame Ontario's new Police Act, passed last month, saying it explicitly excludes the enforcement of First Nations bylaws from the mandatory police functions.
It's a racist piece of legislation. If somebody could explain different to me, I'm willing to listen.
Here's what this Indigenous chief says she wants from the government.
I'm looking for the province of Ontario to step up to the plate, make sure that our women and children are protected and taken care of. Otherwise, you're creating a lawless society.
In question period, the Solicitor General was asked about these concerns.
As this matter is before the court, it would be inappropriate for me to comment any further.
The federal government says council are reviewing the statement of claim to determine next steps.
The ball is in their court right now, the Premier and the Prime Minister.
The chiefs say they'd prefer to sit down and resolve this outside court. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
Troubled plane maker Boeing is the subject of yet another investigation by the Federal Aviation Administration in the U.S. The FAA is looking into reports from the company that employees falsified inspection records for some 787 Dreamliners. Inspections may not have been completed to ensure the wings and the fuselage were fitted together properly. Last month, a whistleblower told U.S. lawmakers that Boeing had been taking shortcuts to get 787s produced as quickly as possible. The company has been under intense pressure since a door plug blew out of a Boeing 737 MAX during a flight in January. 3 men accused of killing Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar last June appeared in a BC court today. The 3, all Indian nationals, were arrested in Edmonton last week. Each is charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to murder. It's a case that's putting renewed focus on allegations that India has been actively meddling in Canadian affairs. Georgie Smythe has more from Surrey.
There was just an extraordinary level of interest in this second court appearance today. More than 100 members of the Sikh community came out to witness the hearing of the 3 men accused of killing their temple leader, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. There was a long queue to get into the courthouse and into the courtroom as well, and certainly a bit of jostling to get to the limited seats available in there and in the overflow room. I spoke to one man in the line who was a longtime friend of Mr. Nijjar, who told me he took the day off work to be here to witness this court process. And that's because today is really the first time we've had a chance, and the community has had a chance to get a real look at the 3 men accused. Karanpreet Singh, Kamalpreet Singh and Karan Bra were arrested in Edmonton on Friday. They appeared separately via video link in the Surrey courthouse today, wearing red jail-issued uniforms, and weren't required to say much other than to confirm they understood the directions of the court. A Punjabi translator was brought in to communicate with Kamalpreet Singh, and the issue of translation services was brought up by the men's counsel for future appearances. We expect these matters to continue in court in the next 2 weeks. Now, it's of course hard to talk about these cases without talking about foreign meddling, and the community made sure to highlight those links today, actually bringing into the courthouse a sign with the 3 accused men's faces right next to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I asked Maninder Singh, the spokesperson for the BC Gurdwaras Council, what it was like to look into those men's faces via video link in the courtroom today.
Our issue is still India. As in, when I look at them, I don't see anything except for a couple of people that were hired to carry something out on behalf of India. So when we see them, we really just see that Indian flag, that kind of that genocide that's been committed against our people, this transnational repression, this violence that's been brought to Canada now.
Now, police were asked about the alleged links between the 3 arrested men and the Indian government when they announced charges on Friday. They were quite guarded in their response, but we do expect to learn more about those allegations as this court process continues. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Surrey.
Taking you now to the Middle East, the war between Israel and Hamas is 7 months old today, and there have been 2 key developments. Israeli officials have traveled to Egypt for further discussions on a ceasefire deal that Hamas agreed to yesterday. Israel was not involved in the Egyptian brokered talks, and the terms of the deal are not clear. Earlier today, Israeli forces took control of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt with a ground invasion followed by airstrikes. The crossing is a major route for aid into Gaza. The Gaza Border Authority says the Rafah crossing was closed because of the presence of Israeli tanks. Egypt has been closing its end of the crossing in an effort to separate itself from the war and control the movement of refugees. If you live in the GTA, you're probably familiar with the chirping sound that can often be heard at crosswalks, indicating it's safe to cross. Well, York Region is now spending $400,000 to change that sound at all its traffic lights, saying it can be too similar to that of a bird or can be muffled by the noise of traffic. We went to Vaughan to find out more.
Walking up to the audible pedestrian signal here at Major Mackenzie Drive in Fossil Hill. I'm pressing the button, holding it for a few seconds. There's a clicking noise. York Region is working with our electrical maintenance contractor to reprogram over 400 audible pedestrian signals right across York Region, focusing on our most urban areas where we have high volumes of pedestrians and cyclists. I will wait for the walk to be displayed, and you hear the cuckoo sound, which is their traditional audible pedestrian sound, which we will change today.
So we walk up to the push button, hit the power button. The east-west right now are the chirps, and the north-south are the cuckoos. So with the east-west chirp changing to the Canadian melody, you got to do each one individually so you don't mess up the settings.
Is on.
So right now it's chirp, and I'm able to scroll through.
Sign is on.
And change to the new sound. And there's lots of different sounds that these have. And we're going to the new Canadian melody. So now we test this button and then move on to the next.
The current north-south and east-west crossing, so the sort of cuckoo clock style north-south one, which actually melody means north-south, north-south, and the east-west chirping bird were the first ones I ever heard. So to me, they were nothing unusual. And there it is. So when I heard what it was being changed to, my ears perked up, and it actually stands for crossing east-west, crossing east-west. I would love to know why they called it the Canadian melody, but but it's a nice touch. I don't mind it. It is definitely louder. I think that it will help. I think it might actually be a benefit to more people if it's tough to hear it, especially over the sound of traffic, one thing, but big trucks or sirens or anything. All in all, it's a good change.
Going to Colette now for a check on the forecast. And Colette, we will be dealing with some on and off showers.
Yeah, we do have this wet weather that's coming in here, already been moving in through these overnight hours, and a lot of it just the remnants, but also still a few storms in there, especially more so to the north and to the south of the GTA, but we've got some of that that's rumbling through. So rain and thunderstorms through the overnight hours, but that moves out, at least for the GTA, by tomorrow morning so that we're dry in the morning. We really get into these varying conditions on Wednesday. What I mean by that, it's going to be mild, but it's also going to be windy, and at times it's going to be dry, and at times it's not going to be. So we'll walk you through all of that, and then behind the cold front that's going to go through, we get into a pattern change with cooler air moving in. Not cool today, certainly some really nice numbers above seasonal, well, not quite, but around 5 degrees above normal. And then as we go towards tomorrow, those temperatures come up a little bit further. And as for the active weather, which has been mostly stateside, of course, a little bit with the watch earlier for southwestern Ontario, it keeps moving eastward. So tomorrow, the highest threat in the areas here in orange for some of that active severe weather. So the leftover kind of cluster of some of these storms still working its way on through, remains active to the north of us into tomorrow morning. That's still wet there along the Bruce Peninsula, the eastern shores of Georgian Bay. Dry in the morning, but then we'll be quite on the line there as we go towards the afternoon hours for the city to see some or experience some of the cloud cover and the rain to pass through, whereas further south or southwest, it'll be sunshine plus the mild conditions. But all along here, we're going to be talking about some rather windy conditions as we'll be in the warm sector, but then that cold sector is going to be coming on through with the cold front. We do have that chance of showers, especially from the Niagara region to about Hamilton back into southwestern Ontario on Thursday, but I put the risk into Toronto as well and right across towards Pickering and Oshawa and through that region, but not necessarily north towards Markham. You'll probably do a little bit better there, or Aurora, Orangeville, and those kinds of regions. So the stronger winds tomorrow afternoon, how strong? Yeah, some of those gusts 50 to 60 kilometers an hour. Temperatures overnight tonight, those are definitely going to be mild, but look how mild the high is tomorrow, headed up to 22 degrees. Then the pattern change, chance of some wet weather, but not necessarily for Mother's Day.
Okay, that is good to hear for a lot of people, I'm sure. Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
And that is our show for you tonight. We want to leave you with some shots outside on this beautiful spring day. Our cameras caught these cute little goslings with their parents enjoying a nice swim earlier. And we will have your next local news tonight at 11 after the National, and we will see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everyone.